Welcome back, viewers. It is 7:02 a.m. and you are watching Rise and Shine this morning. On set with us this morning is attorney at law Martin George. I know I announced Ms. Haddad, but she will join us a bit later on. So, Mr. George, good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine.
Hi, good morning to you, and good morning to you, Eddie, and good morning to Tobago. And I must apologize to viewers who would much rather see the lovely Miss Haddad. If I had a choice, I would choose to see her ahead of seeing me also, but she will be here shortly.
Yes.
So my apologies to viewers and to Ms. Haddad.
You know, of course, Eddie and I were speaking earlier on about the dismissal of Jawala Rambarran. We all know that there was a public spat going on, or what appeared to be a public spat between Mr. Rambarran and the finance minister, Mr. Com Imbe. So I don't know what's your take on it, what you can share with the public in terms of coming from your legal profession.
Well, the thing is, the first thing we have to look at is we must always be guided by the law.
Yes.
When you look at the legislation, Chapter 7902 of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, which sets out the Central Bank Act. Under Section 7 of that Act, it says the governor shall be appointed for a term of 5 years. So there would be within Mr. Rambarran an expectation, and I would say a legitimate expectation, that he would be there for 5 years at least.
Right.
So you would juxtapose that against the powers which are set out in Section 20 of the legislation, and you look to see, well, is it that you have an inalienable right to hold on to the position? And you realize in Section 20 they deal with the question of transfers, so people can be transferred. And then you also have sections which deal with the question of where you can be removed from the office. And it would appear that the president, the acting president, acting on the advice of cabinet, took a decision to have this present governor removed and a new one appointed. Now, there is no question as to whether there is indeed that power within the president to be able to act on the advice of the government in that regard. So you can remove someone from office. The question I would imagine that arises, or that Mr. Rambarran would wish to raise, would be the manner in which it was done. So in other words, from what I have seen him saying in the media and what he has put out publicly, I think he's questioning the procedure and the lack of procedural fairness as he sees it, because he claims that he was not properly consulted. He claims that he was not given an opportunity to be heard. He claims that he was given no official complaint, which, you know, he was called upon to answer officially. So these are the things that he's looking at. Now, when you look at Section 12 of the legislation, it says the president may terminate the appointment of the governor or deputy governor, and then it sets out certain criteria. All right, you have becomes of unsound mind, becomes bankrupt, you have is convicted of and sentenced to a term of imprisonment, is convicted of an offense involving dishonesty. None of those apply. All right, then you have E, is guilty of misconduct in relation to his duties. And then you have under Section F, B, FA says fails to comply with Section 16.1. Then you have FB, contravenes any provision of any prescribed code of ethics in respect of which he is liable to termination of his appointment. And then you have G, which says fails to carry out any of the duties or functions conferred or imposed upon him. Now, one would imagine that in making the request to the president, the cabinet note or the cabinet decision would have specified which of these criteria it is seeking to invoke in order to ask the president to terminate the appointment. Because, in other words, everything must be done lawfully. It doesn't matter just that you were trying to do the right thing. You must also do it in the right manner. And that is so important. We saw the effect of that a couple of years ago with the dismissal of Mr. Nizam Mohammed, as he then was, as chairman of the Police Service Commission. You would recall that act was done by former President George Maxwell Richards, and Mr. Nizam Mohammed challenged that in court. Now, let's understand what you can challenge. You are not challenging the power of the president to do the act. What he was challenging is the manner in which it was done. Mr. Nizam Mohammed claimed that he was not given a sufficient opportunity to respond. He was not given a sufficient opportunity to defend himself. And I guess it's along similar lines we are already seeing the underpinnings of Mr. Rambarran's defense taking shape, because he is not seeking ab initio, at least from what I have seen publicly. He's not seeking to suggest that you have no power to dismiss me, but he is looking to challenge the manner and the process by which it was done.
Right. Mr. George rightly said the process really concerns me. And I'm glad that you quoted. I'm glad that you quoted the instance with Mr. Nizam Mohammed. So there is a quite recent instance.
That's right, and that judgment of Justice Jones was not appealed by the state.
Okay, so that the senior counsels could have referred to that decision in making their preliminary decision for this case. And you know, I sat and I read the article. And senior counsels come at a very high price to the state. And for not giving that preliminary information, or not ensuring that preliminary information was given, or things were done in the proper way, you know, the preliminary things were done in the proper way, really concerns me.
I'll just stick a pin here, Eddie, to say that I don't know that it was not done. I mean, you speak with confidence as if you are sure that it was not done. I always give attorneys the fullest respect that they would have done their due diligence and research and given proper advice. Okay, and I have nothing to suggest otherwise.
Oh, you mean it was done to...
No, I'm not saying it was done. I say I don't have any evidence that it was not done.
Okay.
So in other words, that's why I set out the specifics in the legislation, and I'm saying that I am assuming that these would have been the grounds you would have looked at to formulate your advice to cabinet, and then subsequently your cabinet note, which would then now be transmitted to the president to say, look, for these reasons A, B, C. I always would give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you did things properly until proven otherwise.
Yes, I think one of the weekend papers, I think it was the Sunday Express, he was quoted, or he said that he was not given the right to answer the alleged incident.
I saw that.
And what have you. So based on that, you know.
No, well, I saw what he said, but I think the government has also countered that this morning with something in the press saying that, look, they did give the opportunity. So all of this is really just public speculation, because there's no court matter filed as yet. There's no evidence before a court as yet. So it's only on what evidence is actually before the court that anything will be determined one way or the other. So we can speak in a vacuum and speak on the public speculation, but none of that will impinge or impact upon an actual court matter until the evidence is put before the judge and the judge weighs the evidence in the balance. But one must understand that position of central bank governor carries with it a tremendous burden of responsibility. It's similar to the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the US. Yes. You know, whenever the chairman of the Federal Reserve has to make an announcement, it's a momentous occasion, because when you hold these positions, first of all, the rule of thumb is you speak very little publicly on any issue. The less you say is always better. because anything you say can have such a dramatic effect on your economy, your financial system, confidence in, investor confidence. So therefore, the less you say, the better.
Right.
So therefore, when you have the chairman of the Federal Reserve coming to make an announcement for days in advance, it's being told, and everybody's waiting anxiously, because your words can have such a ripple effect, and you can send stock markets tumbling based on just what you say. So therefore, we must always understand the responsibility and the weight of that position. We've had in Trinidad and Tobago a rather rich and fecund history of very good and, central bank governors who've been held in high esteem internationally. We've had William Dimas. We've had Victor Bruce, so we do have that rich tradition, right? We have Uric Bob, internationally respected, So the thing is, we have to recognize that with it comes a certain degree of responsibility. One must never be seen as making off-the-cuff remarks as a central bank governor. It's better they say he's not speaking at all than he's speaking too much, and your words are damaging or shaking confidence in the in the nation's economy. So we have to be careful in terms of that and understand the responsibility that goes with it. So I am not saying yay or nay one way or the other in terms of who's right or who's wrong, but at the end of the day, we must understand that the central bank governor must enjoy the confidence of the government of the day. Otherwise, you are you're making a recipe for chaos. You cannot have a scenario where your central bank governor is in conflict or in a running battle with the government of the day, because they are supposed to be focused on the same objective: building and sustaining the economy, keeping that stability in your financial system. So if they're not focused on the same objective and they're focused on fighting each other, then obviously one way or the other it has to come to a head and one has to go. And obviously in this scenario, the government does have the trump card to make the recommendation to the president. So I think it's something that appeared inevitable given the collision course that they were on.
Yes.
Whether it's fair, whether it's just or whatever, these are things I would imagine a court would determine. But certainly for the nation's good, it could not continue on this, course of friction and, this acrimonious scenario.
And I think that is what made it worse, that public back and forth between the two parties. And I'm saying, if you are leaders, you should know how to resolve these issues. So I'm thinking of our young people looking on, and it's a problem that has not just started, but a lot of our leaders who are supposed to take charge and set examples, you see their behavior being questionable. So as you mentioned, we can't take sides. We don't know who's right, who's wrong. The legal part of it will be worked out. But for me, I'm looking at, the social spin-off of it, the attitudes you see.
That's right.
And I think the entire thing was escalated because it came in the public in a particular way.
I think, to his credit, former Minister of Finance Mariano Brown, he did say very early o'clock that this is something which ought to be resolved quietly behind closed doors, rather than to be played out as a soap opera in the public gallery. But unfortunately, the parties were not able to have that type of meeting of the minds, in private, so as to say, well, look, we may not always agree. However, for the purpose of our objective and our goal, we can set aside our differences. It didn't appear that occurred. And I take your point. And again, you see, it comes to the question of us being able to call upon our leaders in society to be held to a higher standard. We, the citizens, have for years accepted the low standard that they have delivered, and we have felt that that's the norm. That's not the norm. You look in any civilized country in the world, that's not how people behave. But we accept this in Trinidad and Tobago. We allow them to get away with it, and we just treat it as another, drama and scandal and bacchanal, and it's a lacquerie, and and of course we're getting into the carnival season, so we tend to take these things as par for the course. But I've always felt that we must always be able to separate fun, merriment, and entertainment from serious business, governance, and accountability.
Yeah.
You must separate the two.
Mr. George, in perusing the Central Bank Act there, is there anything to any stipulation on a time frame that the central bank governor and the Minister of Finance must consult, must reach?
Well, I don't know if there's a specific timeline to say that, every 3 months they must meet but the point is, it is required that they do have consultation and meetings, and that they do, confer.
But who initiate the consultations? Who would initiate?
Well, I would imagine that in terms of a reporting role, the central bank governor would have a duty to report to the Minister of Finance. And I think that's where we heard publicly the present minister, you're saying that in terms of a certain statement that was put out, he was not consulted. So, I would imagine the reporting role must come from the central bank governor to the minister. Because at the end of the day, this is the Minister of Finance and the Economy. So one has to look at all these issues. But the point is, it's something that I think was wholly unnecessary to have escalated to this. And I think some of the statements were totally unwarranted, with the greatest of respect to all concerned, particularly the ones which can have the effect of really shaking the foundations of your economy and your financial system. The point is, these are not things you say lightly or blithely. These are not things that, you say off the cuff, or, in a joke, or, in a jocular manner.
Yes.
It's not a joking matter. These are serious things. You have persons whose livelihoods are going to be affected simply by the words you utter.
Okay.
Quite true. And sorry, Eddie, you.
Go ahead, Natalie.
I'm also looking at in terms of information coming from any government. And, we're talking about things we have learned to accept in Trinidad and Tobago as okay or as the norm. And we know deep down it's not the right thing. So that Mr. Rambarran was dismissed, and a lot of allegations are being thrown from the people on the ground as to why he may have been dismissed. I'm not sure if the government clearly stated to the public why he was dismissed, because these are public officers, and it is my opinion that we need to know exactly what's going on, whether someone is being hired for what reason, to do what, if someone is being dismissed, why, and as the case may be.
I agree with you fully, and I think that as part of your openness and transparency, there ought to have been a public statement by the government indicating that, look, for these reasons, we have called upon the president or the acting president to terminate the appointment of Mr. Rambarran. And then also, for these reasons, we have advised that Dr. St. Hilaire be appointed as the new governor. I think that there ought to have been that type of communication put out there, so that way you avoid some of the unnecessary speculation. Because I've also heard some public speculation on the question of whether they should have done it when Mr. Carmona was here, or whether he was absent. That's idle and useless speculation, with the greatest of respect. And I say this, I'm always very respectful of persons, but the reason why I say that is, when you are acting in the capacity of the substantive office holder, if you are acting president, you are imbued and invested with all the powers, authorities, responsibilities, liabilities of the substantive office holder. So you have the full power and authority to do any act which the sitting president can do. So whether it was brought before the substantive office holder or the acting president, that's irrelevant. I saw people trying to suggest, well, the acting president is an appointee of the current government, so therefore it was himself to himself. That's absolute rubbish at the end of the day, with the greatest of respect, because you are holding the office, and therefore in that capacity you are carrying out your functions as president for all intents and purposes.
Mr. George, I hope that we are not a 10-year wonder, we forget so quickly. In 1990, remember Mr. Carter.
But I made that point this morning on another station.
I didn't hear you, but Mr. Carter was the president of the Senate, and
he was acting, and he's the one who signed the amnesty.
And he
That's
signed
right.
it, and
I made that point this morning.
The court held it that he was the president.
That's right, and he's fully entitled.
Yes.
In addition to which, even more recently, we've had Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith, who was president of the Senate under the previous government, who, when he acted as president, was called upon to take very serious decisions in terms of appointment and removal of persons. Yeah. And that's while current President Carmona was on vacation or out of the country. So therefore, really and truly, as I say, that argument, really, there's absolutely no basis for it whatsoever. So we have to separate, the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, but Mr. Prakash Ramadhan said that the cabinet has acted as judge, jury, and execution.
Oh, sorry, Eddie. Mr. Who?
I'm just quoting here from one of the papers. Mr. Prakash Ramadhan.
And who is he again?
Well, he was a member of the past government.
In terms of current relevance?
Well, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. Honestly,
neither am I.
Honestly, I'm not sure, right? But for history,
Right, for history. Okay, yes.
We quote him,
yes.
Right? But he said that as the cabinet acted as judge, jury, and executioner. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing is, let's separate the make of the statement and let's focus on the substance of the statement. The thing is, there's absolutely no merit or basis to it, because at the end of the day, that's what your cabinet is for. Your cabinet is to take decisions. So the point is, if they have decided, well, look, this is the scenario and this person must go, and let's not forget, remember, former governor of the central bank, Uric Bob, was also dismissed from office, if you recall. You remember, he also had an issue with the government of the day, and basically his appointment was brought to an end. Let's not forget our history. You see, and the thing is, he was later vindicated because the IMF snapped him up, and they were so happy to have him because of the wealth of experience that he had and the knowledge that he was able to bring, so therefore he was vindicated in that sense. However, the point is, we have had scenarios where in the past there have been conflicts with the government of the day and your governor of the central bank, and it is always resolved in the government's favor, because at the end of the day, the government is the one who calls the shots in the circumstances. So we must understand and recognize that. And I think even in this present scenario, Mr. Rambarran, if you notice, he's not at all suggesting that I cannot be dismissed. All he's said so far publicly seems to be the manner in which it was done.
Okay. Well, it's good to see that we can recall some history on Tobago Channel 5.
Oh yes, no, it's important. It's important for us to remember our history, because it's something I always bring up on this program, because I say we in Tobago particularly, we seem to have forgotten our history. Right now we are complaining about Tobago and the fact that we are not as productive and as industrious as we used to be. And I keep saying that, look, if we look back to some years ago, Tobago was the breadbasket, the food producer. Tobagonians were known for being industrious, hardworking, entrepreneurial, very, able to survive and to, get things done. We've produced some of the best and most brilliant minds in Trinidad and Tobago. We've had people like Russell Martineau, we've had Victor Bruce, we've had, so many persons, A&R Robinson. We have been able to produce way above our pound-for-pound capacity. You're talking about a small island of about 50 to 60,000 people out of 1.3 million, and we have produced, leaders. We produced a Chief Justice, so we've been able to do it. But I think somewhere along the way, we've lost that vision and that focus, and we need to recapture that, and we need to get our people to understand that, look, you have it within you. You have the potential, you have the ability, but it's just a matter of harnessing that. And I would imagine that that's where our leaders like Ms. Diane Haddad, who is going to come on next, will be showing the way forward, because we need that guidance, we need that light to show people the way forward, because a people who do not have a vision are doomed to perish.
Right.
Because we will end up wandering around in the desert like the Israelites for 40 years with no hope, no salvation. So we need to have persons come up from Tobago who will take that leadership role. I think our present leaders, they have done what they could, and we must thank them for that. But I think Tobago needs a new vision, a new breath of fresh air to take us forward to a new level, because we are really stagnated. We are, making absolutely no progress economically, financially, socially, culturally, nothing at all. You look at Tobago and you actually feel no sense of improvement or enhancement in terms of all the money that we've gotten over the years. So we must not despair. We must not despair at all. We must never give up on Tobago. We must never give up on Tobagonians, because I always have that innate faith and belief in the people of Tobago. I think all we need is to be able to guide and direct our energies and our focus in the right direction, and we will see Tobago transformed.
Mr. George, thanks for your passion.
I always love to leave on a positive note and give a positive message.
And I hope that you'll be one of those who is willing to come forward, to assist us.
I do my part by speaking.
Just a wish.
All right, thanks a lot, Eddie, and thank you, Tobago, and it's a pleasure, and I wish you all an early greeting of Happy New Year, and I look forward to a very bright and prosperous 2016 for Tobago, and I think that we can do it if we all pull together and band together. We can make it better.
Well, it's not that we can do it. Certainly we can do it. We must do it.
True.
Quite true.
For the good of Tobago and the survival of our children and grandchildren.
Yes.
We must do it.
Yes.
Quite true.
Yes.
And viewers, we will end this interview here, and I think it ended on a high note. You have been challenged to come together and do better. Potential is great, but it's nothing if we don't utilize it.
Right.
So let's get going. We're coming to the end of another year, and a new year is on the horizon, and we know that a new year will bring great things for us. So really, let's come together and get going. We're getting ready to go to our 7:30 Rise and Shine morning news. I stand corrected. I'm getting a sign from my producer. We'll just take a quick break, and when we come back, definitely joining us on set would be Miss Haddad.
All right,